What is cracking, my brothers and sisters? It's your boy Memphis here, coming at you live with a discussion video you've all been waiting for. We are finally going after it. We are going to be talking about the Kuriboh Archetype, one of the greatest archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! That every other YouTuber I know of gets wrong. In every sense of the word. So yes, today we're just going to go over all the main deck and extra deck members of the Kuriboh Archetype. Not the Kree Archetype, mind you. That is going to get its own separate video later. We're just going to go over all the Kuriboh's original. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the OG Kuriboh, who is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster with 300 attack and 200 defense. Its effect being that during your opponent's turn at the damage calculation, you can discard this card and you take no battle damage from that battle, this here being a quick effect. Now, other than being the most memeable furball you ever done seen, the OG Kuriboh sets up the entirety of the archetype that he is based around, as they are all level 1 monsters. They are all having 300 attack, 200 defense, and the majority of them have effects that involve being discarded from the hand. Dating back all the way to Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon, Kuriboh is in fact himself the very first hand trap in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you've ever lost a duel to something like Psyframes, the Ghost Girls, Honest, etc., etc., you can all blame it on this furball, as he is the great-great-great-grandfather of the lot of them. As to the actual effect itself, well, to be honest, the original Kuriboh's effect is a little underwhelming as to today's standards, because it only stops one instance of battle damage, but it can save you in a pinch. And it does have support and relevance in the rest of the archetype. So, while it's not the greatest of Kuribohs anymore, it is still a very beautiful Kuriboh to be run. And I never hesitate to run at minimum 2. I always run at least 2. If you want to play the more spam link variants, then go ahead and run 3. But for now, Kuriboh sets up a good standard for the rest of the archetype. Next up, we have Winged Kuriboh, a light fairy with 300 attack and 200 defense, level 1 of course. And his effect is that if this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, for the rest of the turn, you take no battle damage. Now, Winged Kuriboh is a little bit divergent from the rest of the archetype. Of course, he does not have a discard effect, but that is fine because he actually benefits the archetype the most. Kuribohs are all about protecting you, being your bodyguard, being your man, and Winged Kuriboh is like the embodiment of that. If he is destroyed in any means while he's on the field, then you take no damage the rest of the turn. But don't think it protects you from piercing attack, okay? Jaden cheated that one time. We're not going to talk about that. But yes, most importantly, however, other than, the obviously protection, Winged Kuriboh being a light fairy monster not only gives Kuribohs the additional support of Blackluster Soldier and Chaos monsters, but it also lets you run Sky Scourges, which give you extra meme cred. Kuriboh is also the key to some of your bigger monsters if you so choose to run them. So I choose to run 3 in my deck, and I always come out on top. Before we get into the more standard members of the archetype, we have 2 high-level monsters to talk about. The first one being Winged Kuriboh level 9, who looks like he's about to beat the crap out of somebody, I tell you what. He is a light level 9 fairy monster with questionable attack and defense, and his effect is this following. During either player's turn, as a chain link of 3 or higher, you can special summon this card from the hand. Spell cards that have been activated are banished instead of sent to the graveyard, and this card's attack and defense are equal to the number of spell cards in the opponent's graveyard times 500, but you can only control 1 face-up Winged Kuriboh level 9. Now, Winged Kuriboh level 9 is an interesting member, if anything. For starters, he has a very interesting and pretty much unique summoning mechanism, as being able to be summoned during a chain link is pretty sure that he's the only one who can do that. The only card I can think of off the top of my head that can be special summoned during a specific link. But regardless, let's talk about the actual effect itself. Winged Kuriboh's effect seems a bit contradictory at first, but in fact it's 2 separate effects for 2 separate situations. If you start off going turn 1 and you manage to turbo this thing out by whatever means, anything your opponent plays, any spells they play, will be banished instead. So it screws over any opponent who wants to keep their spells in the graveyard. I think Brandish Maidens, but try to keep this thing alive during Brandish Maidens. A little tricky, but it's not impossible to do. The second effect, however, most meta decks will run lots of spell cards, and they do want to get those spell cards up and running, and so they're going to have plenty of spells in the graveyard, meaning Winged Kuriboh level 9 will have a high attack when it hits the board, providing that your opponent doesn't run in battle traps, which most meta decks don't run anymore, but they do run plenty of negation. Very gimmicky, but I would say that this guy is on point. He does what he says he does, so If you want to make a gimmicky kind of sort of deck around this dude, go right ahead. I will not stop you. Next up, of course, is a card everybody knows. Winged Kuriboh level 10, looking like the majestic falcon that he is. He is a light level 10 fairy monster with 300 attack, 200 defense. No questionable shenanigans here. And he cannot be normal summoned except, but it can only be special summoned with the Transcendent Wings card. It cannot be special summoned by other ways. Transcendent Wings being a quick play spell that lets you send Winged Kuriboh you control and 2 cards from your hand to the graveyard to special summon this guy from hand or deck. And during your opponent's battle phase, you contribute this face-up card to destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls and inflict damage to your opponent equal to the combined original attack of those destroyed monsters. Now, even if you don't know anything about Winged Kuriboh or any Kuriboh for that matter, 9 times out of 10 you've at least heard of this card. It is pretty infamous, even though I'm pretty sure it was only used like once or maybe twice at the most in the actual anime. But regardless, Winged Kuriboh level 10 is a beast of a monster that leads Kuribohs to their own OTK strategy involving your opponent having lots of monsters. You summon this thing, burn your opponent to death with. However, there's 2 main problems with this guy, unfortunately. Number 1, Kuribohs, despite being an archetype about discarding themselves, don't actually have a lot of cards that they want discarded. I can only think of Relink Kuriboh and Kuriboh, we'll get into them later. So, summoning this thing's a little costly in a purist Kuriboh deck, or whatever deck you're running this dude in. The second, albeit more obvious problem with this guy is he's too well known. Okay, most everybody has heard of this dude. Most everybody knows what he does. It's too easy to disrupt. So as much as I love Winged Kuriboh level 10, and I would highly recommend trying out Winged Kuriboh level 10 OTK sometime, it's not so good in today's game. Sorry to say, man. I mean, I love that artwork. I love this card, but it just doesn't work in today's game as much as I would like it to do. Next up on our chopping block is Junk Kuriboh, a level 1 Earth Machine monster with 300 attack and 200 defense. Man, this guy's diversion is all get out. He looks like he's in a rebellious gang that mugs old ladies. So during either player's turn, you can, when your opponent activates a card or effect that would inflict damage to you, you can send this guy from your hand or the field to the graveyard to negate activation, and if you do, destroy the card. Burn damage is one of the biggest problems that Kuriboh decks have in general. The little puffballs catch fire way too easy. And so Junk Kuriboh is like good protection against that. However, he's a bit too divergent from the rest of the deck. I mean, he's an earth monster and a machine for that matter. So it kind of clashes a little bit. I mean, look at those eyes. Those eyes looks like he wants to eat me for breakfast. But, you know, while he may not be a main deck option, I personally run him in the side deck because, you know, you're not always going to run into burn decks. But when you do, you're going to want Junk Kuriboh on your side to protect you. So I always tech in 2 to the side deck and he runs just fine for me. Next up, being all prideful, is Rainbow Kuriboh, the Kuriboh with the most pride of them all. A light level 1 fiend monster with 100 attack and defense, and his effects, he has 2 of them. Opponent's monster declares an attack, you can target the monster, equip this card from hand to that monster, and it cannot attack at all, so long as this card is equipped to it. And when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack while this card's in the graveyard, you can special summon it, but it vanishes when it leaves the field. So, Rainbow Kuriboh's a nice little bugger. You just slap them onto your opponent's monsters, they can't attack. Of course, it doesn't work on something like Chaos Max, but who cares? There's better things in this archetype to beat up with Chaos Max anyway. Rainbow Kuriboh is a very nice little tech, just to give yourself a little bit of extra protection from one attack, and even if it gets removed, it can be brought back by its own effect. And that is enough to earn him the seal of approval. Granted, due to the other cards in the deck that you'd like to run that are like really good for the deck, Rainbow Kuriboh sadly has lost some of his placement, but I still tech in 1 and I've never had a problem with him. Go ahead and run him yourself. Have yourself a good time. So excited for this next one. Perform a Pal Kuriboh is finally coming. Look at him. Look at him. He's a dark level 1 fiend with 300 attack, 200 defense, part of both the Performa Pal and the Kuriboh archetype. Okay, I'm fine with this. Whatever. But when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from the hand, and if you do, you change the attack target to this card and then perform the damage calculation. Sounds weird, but if you would take battle damage from that battle, you gain that much life point instead. So, Kuriboh here is, you might not have heard of him, but that's because he's been locked in the manga for a long time, and there's a good reason for that. The original manga effect of Kuriboh actually had it so that you could special summon during a direct attack, and you would gain life points instead of taking damage, regardless of whether he battled or another monster you controlled battled. So, they kind of had to screw around with the effect a little bit to make it more legal. Also, I'm pretty sure that the good folks of Konami realized that if you equip this guy with a twin sword flashing light and Dimension Guardian combo, you can just ram this thing into big attack one monsters, gain a ton of life points. So, yes, Kuriboh, once he's in the TCG, I'm going to definitely get this boy. And I'm going to put at least 2 in my deck, because I can see this guy screwing over many, many opponents. And just thinking about putting this guy on the board while an opponent has Chaos Max and gaining 7,800 life points, I'll just put this guy in defense mode. Oh, I can't wait for that. Yes. Yes, perform about Kuriboh. Beautiful. I love the art. I love the effect. I love everything about this card. Next up, we have an interesting member of the archetype, Relink Kuriboh, who is, some reason relinquished support, but who cares? He's a dark level 1 fiend with 300 attack, 200 defense. And if this card is tributed, you draw 1 card. Mind you, this is not once per turn. And if your monster would be destroyed by battle, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. Relink Kuriboh is an interesting one. He doesn't have a discard effect, obviously, but he has a very pertinent defensive ability, and it saved my butt more than enough times, I'll tell you what. The ability to banish this guy in order to protect your monster from being destroyed, your opponent can't solemn it or anything, so it's very nice. So unless they have, obviously the Call to the Grave, Abyss Dweller, they can stop it, but more often than not, you're going to have this little dude in your graveyard, and it's going to protect your monsters from that nasty battle. As for the first effect, well, if you want to play the relinquished sort of build of Kuribohs, take in 3 Relink Kuribohs and use them as the ritual materials, and you'll be able to plus as much as you want. I mean, that's pretty much the idea. I mean, he has a relinquished eye on his back, so I imagine that was the purpose of this. But anyway, yes, Relink Kuriboh, I put him as 1 in a purest Kuriboh deck. You can run more if you want more protection. Run 3 if you're running the ritual variant, and you'll have yourselves a good time. All bow down for Kuriboh, the man who made this entire archetype 10 times more viable just by his divine presence. A light level 1 fiend with 300 attack, 200 defense. Kuriboh's effect is that at the end of the battle phase, you can discard this card to target a monster in your grave that was destroyed by battle and send there this turn and special summon it. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from the graveyard and then target any number of Kuribohs and special summon them. Now, you guys might remember this guy when Divine Dragon Felgrand got a lot of support and they teched in Kuriboh. Because when Felgrand gets destroyed on the field, then you bring him back from the grave, he gets more effects. So they teched this guy, but some beautiful person over at Konami said, let's give it Kuriboh support. The ability of Kuriboh is very simple. Bring back your Kuriboh so you can use them for Exceeds and Links and things. And just the fact that this thing can soul charge for up to 5 monsters, up to 3 times without burial from the different dimension, up to 12 times with burial from the different dimension, it speaks for itself. This card is an absolute 3-of staple, and it will never be anything else. It is just perfect in every way. I don't know what else to say except it's perfect in every special little way. Look at that for a ball. Ugh. Next up, we have Sphere Kuriboh, looking more like the Winged Dragon Frost Sphere mode, but whatever, he's awesome. A Dark Fiend, level 1, 300 attack, 200 defense. I don't know why I'm saying the stats so much, they're all the same. Anyway, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send this card from the hand to the graveyard to change the attacking monster to defense mode. And when you ritual summon a monster, you can banish this card from the graveyard as one of the monsters required for the ritual summoning. The first effect is absolutely amazing. You can switch any monster to defense mode that's attacking, albeit it doesn't work on Links, obviously, but we don't care. This thing works on Chaos Max Dragon. I don't know why I keep bringing up Chaos Max Dragon. He's not even in this video. Anyway, this guy switches anything attacking to defense mode. It doesn't target. That's the most beautiful thing. It's non-targeted, position changing. And while that doesn't sound so impressive nowadays, it absolutely works in this deck. As for the second effect, again, this works with Relink Kuriboh as part of a ritual sort of thing. You put this in, again, with Relinquished and have yourself a good time with it. And if you're wondering why Kuriboh has all this ritual support, it's mostly because when Yami used Blacklister Soldier the first time, he used Kuriboh as the tribute, so there's your reference there. Next up, we have Clear Kuriboh, a light level 1 fairy with 300 attack, 200 defense. There's those stats again. Anyway, his effect is during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect that would inflict damage, you can discard this card to negate the activation. Mind you, this does not destroy. When an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can banish this card from the graveyard, draw a card, and if it's a monster, you can special summon it and change the attack target to that monster. You only use this effect once per turn. Clear Kuriboh is a nice, again, bit of protection against the burn damage. Mind you, it doesn't work on Trick Stars because of how they're worded, but screw Trick Stars anyway. Clear Kuriboh is a nice little thing. I actually put it in the main deck, not because of the burn protection so much, but because the second effect has saved my bacon more than once. Being able to banish itself to potentially protect you from a monster doesn't always work, obviously, but when it does, it lets you protect yourself with a monster, or if it doesn't work, you get one of the spell traps you need in order to protect yourself later. So Clear Kuriboh is a very nice addition to this archetype. I do run at least 2 of this dude. Yeah, he's a very nice card, and he's popping out to see you. Alrighty, the next member of the archetype, of course, is the OG, the man himself, is Link Kuriboh, the Dark Cybers Link with 300 attack and a Link rating of 1. With 1 downward arrow, and he needs 1 level 1 monster. Obviously, the synergy is there. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can tribute him to change the opponent's monster's attack to 0 until the end of the turn. And this card's in the graveyard, being a quick effect. You can tribute a level 1 monster to special summon this card, but you can only use this effect once per turn. Link Kuriboh is a very nice card. I think we've all seen it enough. It's run in pretty much anything that has level 1 monsters. It's run in the meta, for Christ's sake. So I don't know why anybody would say anything wrong about Link Kuriboh, because it's beautiful. I'm so proud of Kuriboh finally having their own extra deck monster. Granted, I would like some sort of massive beach stick or a guy in a robe, but that's just old video references that nobody's going to get. The effect of Link Kuriboh to reduce a monster's attack to 0 is very nice. It doesn't target. It's very nice. It'll protect you from stuff. And the fact that it can keep bringing itself back, well, you only the once, means that you're going to be able to bring it back and use it as a link material for bigger links. So, there you go. As an aside, we should talk about some of the other things you can run in your extra deck alongside Link Kuriboh. You got your Sylvan Princess Sprite for the excavation and searching of cards and spell traps and all that. Lyra Luce can summon Nightingale for big beat and lots of protection. Number 54, Lord Art for the game ending because he is the bossiest of all boss monsters. Slacker Magician for a bit of extra protection and a bit of protection that nobody sees coming. And I always run 1 copy each of 1331, even though they're not as usable nowadays, but you can make it on occasion. I also run Proxy Dragon, just so you know, it's my Link 2, because Link Kuriboh plus Proxy Dragon equals all the zones you need for your 1331. Before we go into the spell traps, however, I want to talk real quick about King Caballo. It's a dark level 1 beast spirit with 400 attack, 200 defense. Not a Kuriboh, but it is an honorary member of the Kuriboh archetype, because damn man, this thing works so well with Kuribohs. Gives you all that recovery that you need to bring back monsters, use them as links, use them as exceeds. And if you already have a monster on board and you can only make a rank 1 exceed, like Slacker or Sylvan Princess Sprite, you can summon this and bring back a monster. Use the 2 monsters you have to make Sylvan or Slacker, and then King Caballo will go back to your hand so you can use it again later. It's a very nice card. I definitely recommend it as a 3 of. Alrighty, finally we're going into the spell trap support. We are starting off with a very nice piece of support called the Flute of Summoning Kuriboh. This is a quick play spell that allows you to add a Kuriboh or Winged Kuriboh from deck to hand, or special summon a Kuriboh or Winged Kuriboh from the deck. That's right, everybody. Kuribohs have a better searcher than Rata, almost. It's very close. This thing needs a bit of a rehash because there's more than just 2 Kuribohs now. I'm just saying. Anyway, the obvious use of this card is pretty basic. You add Kuriboh or Winged Kuriboh when you need things to your hand. Special summon them when you need link or exceed materials. It's pretty simple, pretty basic. Again, if this thing used any Kuriboh, it would be like 100 times better because I could just search out my Kuribohs as often as I wanted. But as it is, the Flute of Summoning Kuriboh synergizes well with the deck. I run it at 3 because obviously you run your best searcher at 3, and it does not disappoint. It has never disappointed me. The card has amazing synergy, especially when we see the other cards. First, we have a quick play spell card that allows you to tribute a Kuriboh to special summon many Kuriboh tokens with the same stats as the OG Kuriboh as possible in defense mode, but they cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. Mind you, I can use them for link summons, And before Firewall Dragon's banning, I used to be able to make Link Kuriboh plus Firewall Dragon off of 1 copy of this, so that's how good that is. That's right, Kuribohs can make tokens almost as good as Tomahawk. Okay, that's how good this card is. Multiply is the card that I run at 2, and it has never failed me. If you want a more link spammy deck, run it at 3 and you'll get all the things. Just make sure you don't run out of cards in your extra deck or else you are screwed. The only problem with Multiply being that it only works on the OG Kuriboh, but other than that I have no complaints about this beautiful card. Next, of course, we have Detonate! Just remember everybody, don't hold on to Kuriboh too long, they explode when they touch you. But yes, Detonate is a reference to the anime because everyone knows Kuribohs explode when they touch people. Don't ask how or why, it just happens. It's a quick play spell that destroys as many Kuriboh and Kuriboh tokens you control as possible. Then destroy cards your opponent controls up to the number of Kuriboh tokens destroyed by this effect. Okay, let me just spread it out to you. Okay, you destroy up to 5 cards your opponent controls. Then you can destroy all their monsters, all their spell traps, half of their monsters, half of the spell traps. You understand what I'm saying? They have a legal version of Harpy's Feather Duster. That is how good this card is. Granted, again, this card only works on the OG Kuriboh on the tokens brought up by Multiply, but it's still a legal version of Harpy's Feather Duster, and I don't know why you would ever complain about this thing. I don't run 3 of them, but I run a copy of it just in case I need to get rid of all my opponent's stuff on a pinch. Probably could run 2, but whatever. You do whatever you want. That's how the game is played. Alright, the last card in the set, sadly, is not the greatest card, but it's Berserker Crush, a quick play spell card that allows you to remove and play a monster from the graveyard. The attack and defense of a face of winged Kuriboh you control becomes equal to the attack and defense of that monster to the end phase of the turn. Obviously, in a pure Kuriboh deck, this card is completely useless. This is the kind of card you put in a variant deck. We have high attack monsters in the graveyard, a wing Kuriboh on board, you need to beat over something in a pinch. I personally don't run Berserker Crush, but look at that artwork. That has got to be the thumbnail, I tell you what, or something. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. This is the kind of card you put into the variant deck, and you have yourself a good time beating over your opponent with a winged Kuriboh. Alrighty, let's get into the grades. Power! Look, Kuribohs only have 300 attack. As much as I love Kuribohs, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They don't have a lot of attack power. It's not the point of the deck to have a lot of attack power, but it's still a thing we have to address. They get a 1. Protection. This is an interesting one because Kuribohs don't really protect themselves all that much. They're all about protecting you, the player, and they do that quite well. Being able to spam themselves onto the board, protect you from damage of multiple types. As an archetype centered around protecting you, I have to give them a 9, because they're pretty damn good at protecting you so long as they keep on going the way they go. Versatility. This is another interesting one. In a pure Kuriboh deck, the versatility isn't all that great because there's only so many good rank 1 Xyzs and a few good links that work with the Kuriboh playstyle. However, because of the way Kuribohs work, they can be splashed in everything from Relinquished, as I've stated before, the Chaos builds. Anything under the sun can run Kuribohs, that's just the thing. It just depends on whether or not those other things screw over Kuriboh. So, I give them a strong 8 and a run with it. Comeback ability. Out the wazoo. If your archetype has the ability to soul charge for 5 up to 12 times, mind you do need Waboku to make this the most of it, but regardless, the comeback ability of Kuribohs cannot be understated. They are just unchallenged in that field. Consistency. Kuribohs aren't the most consistent. Usually they can get all the things they need, but sometimes they need to get the ball rolling a little bit. I liken them to a smaller version of Gladiator Beast in that sense. 7 out of 10. They can usually get all the things that they want with their Flute of Summoning Kuribohs and all that stuff. Sylvan Princess Sprite to dump and Kuribohn to keep things going. But it really not always happens, but it usually does. Now, if there's any things that I can think of that can make Kuribohs better, actually there are a couple things. One, they need a few new monsters. I'm thinking of one monster that can protect against effect destruction, something that none of the Kuribohs can do for some reason, but I imagine that would be too splashable. But regardless, it's something Kuribohs need. I would also love a Kuriboh that could be discarded to bring back Kuribohs during your turn as a nice little buffer to Kuribohn's effect. That way you don't have to rely on Waboku all the time. So that is definitely something they could use. They do need some new boss monsters, something that gives them attack, or just, protects the Kuribohs and protects you at the same time. I made some of these little dudes a long time ago, but, let's see how that goes. And lastly, the most important thing, honestly, they need to be retrained, the spell support. We need, as much as it would be way too powerful, the meta people, the spam players, they would abuse it. But the Flute needs to include all the Kuribohs. Multiply should include more of the Kuribohs at the very least. Detonate, we'll keep Detonate the same just because. But yeah, the retraining of the spells is definitely an important thing that needs to happen. The Kuriboh Archetype is definitely my favorite archetype in the entire game. Their entire playstyle just screams to me, hey, I'm playing what I want to play. Screw you anyway, bigger monsters. And while the archetype has never gotten the meta recognition I've always wanted, their cracks have shown with things like Kuribohs. So I think in the future, if we get the right sort of support, Kuribohs can really become a powerhouse sort of rogue deck that I've always wanted them to be. Never meta, just rogue. And so, with that being said, everybody, I thank you for watching this episode of whatever the heck I'm going to be calling this video. I don't even know anymore. Do let me know in the comments what you think of the Kuriboh Archetype, and I will see you guys next time with, I have no idea what archetype at all. Maybe Shadows?